Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it is time for...
They say the neon lights are bright on Granville. UnSpun.
Wow.
Little George
Next
Benson
level.
for you. George singing George.
George doing George.
Yeah.
I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. Other than what the hell's the big deal about neon signs in this town? I don't get it.
I
It used
know.
to be so celebrated. It used to be so cool.
Yes, this is you're referring, of course, as am I, to the decision by council not to allow a really cool looking sign just kind of on Granville at the party part of Granville, the fun part of Granville, and which used to be all neon all the time. And so council, like the previous council that I was on, are very, very conservative about signage for whatever reason. I don't really understand it. But on Granville, you think, okay, this should be a playful atmosphere, a fun atmosphere. And neon is its history. And you can actually fake neon with LED now. You can do some really cool stuff with lighting. And this proposal that came from the proponent was slightly off Granville, and it just passed an invisible line that made it not possible for staff to approve it. So it had to come to council. And what did council do? Oh, yeah, it's too bright. Yeah, too much light. Too much fun.
Too much fun.
I'm tired of these people.
I'm so tired of invisible lines. I'd like to draw a line in the sand around a bunch of this stuff because this is just ridiculous. I mean, the Toys R Us sign on top of the Bomac sign on Broadway should have been our first obvious point of how broken the sign system is in this town. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Who thought that preserved a landmark?
I know. And, all the city has to do, and there's several other buildings where their signs were removed because the new owners came in. And the city could have said, no, you don't get to remove that sign. That's kind of what it was. But then they got this way to put that sign over top of a sign. It's like, oh, my God. Signs are cool. And the possibilities for technology are amazing. Except our bylaws are so stringent. And there's a process that's been going through for many, many, many years at council. And a report was brought to us in the last term, not related to digital signage, but to normal signage. And the report basically, was a good report, and it was sort of fixing a lot of the problems. And then certain council members amended it to basically put it back to what it was before. It's like, and the staff were like, we spent 4 years on this report, and you just made an amendment that made it completely redundant and pointless. So
George, I need to pick your brain on the sign thing, because I have a couple of bugaboos here. Like that new Safeway sign on, it's Davie Street, right? The Safeway? Is it Davie or Denman? Now I'm all confused.
Down almost at Denman.
Davie at Denman, right on the big digital board sign that had some sort of glitch where it was lit up all night, and the people that lived across the street basically were living a Seinfeld episode with the chicken sign.
Was this a few years ago or recently?
No, this was recently.
Okay, because
a
this
couple
happened a
of
few
weeks
years ago too on the
It
other
did.
Robson.
It did. And it also was a thing with the new digital sign outside of BC Place Stadium, right? That lit up all of and I couldn't imagine living right across from that. And all of a sudden having that.
You moved in next to a stadium, for God's sakes. I mean,
But moving next to a stadium that didn't have the equivalent of 50 TV screens shining in your living room.
And they found a solution for that. Because it's neon. You can tone it down and turn it off and time it and.
So why can't we do that on Granville Street? Because there aren't a lot of people living across the street from the sign that they're talking about on the crossroads.
There are very few people who live on or anywhere near Granville, for that matter. If you are, you're usually higher up, so the signs are way down, because the height restrictions of Granville are 6 stories. So the signage is very low, and it's obviously meant to make the street level exciting.
The Vogue, the Commodore, I mean, even the Roxy.
I know, exactly. There's lots of great examples. And historically, neon, Vancouver was a leader. There's a Courier story written about a month ago and it was focusing on the history of our neon culture and how we were a leader in the world for neon design. And basically the council, over the several councils, ruined that history and pushed people into unemployment.
Why though? I don't understand. Like, is it dangerous to them?
Well, I would think maybe part of it has to do with environment, because it's a gas. So that's one.
But now not necessarily.
Well, you don't have to. Neon, you don't have to. Yeah.
Right.
So it's, you know, and I posted on Twitter today about it because there's a few people posting things, you know, that council needs to get their head out of their asses and look up for once in a while.
Right.
You know, look up to what the city and think about how things look and try to make this place more playful and fun and not so up your ass. Come on.
Stodgy. Yeah. We're so tied down by some decision from whenever that made it in and is so deeply entrenched that it's like nobody even knows why. Like you go down to Hastings Street and you look at Save on Meats, what Mark Brand's that neon sign is so cool. Like people will make a point of going there and getting their picture in front of it. But we're celebrating and spending on the chandelier underneath the bridge, but we can't have the cool Chinatown neon signs. Like a girlfriend of mine I went to high school with has a restaurant in Chinatown. She fought tooth and nail to get the actual original sign refurbished to put outside, like literally trying to save the heritage. And it was, you know, almost a non-starter for Sally Pateman. I'll never forget all that she's been through just to try and, can we hold on to a little bit of what we were?
Think of great cities in the world. What do they all have in common? Signage. It's like cool signs. Think of Times Square. Think of Piccadilly Circus. These are areas, you know, that are really cool. Yeah, okay, they can be, you know, a little over the top, but it's kind of the part of the fun. It's an attraction. It's, you know, and I think, don't have it everywhere, but Granville Street, come on.
Right.
Chinatown, which has a history of cool signage as well. Nonsense, more nonsense from City Hall and Park Board over the last 2 years than I need to even, I'm having a.
Oh, you are?
Well, you
took my call.
This was your week.
I was so mad.
You're off Twitter. You took yourself, you're at least off the app.
I took the app off my phone. I did. I'll get to that in a second. But I was so.
It's one of those weeks.
I was so mad.
Yeah.
At the last park board meeting result. I had to phone you. I had to phone you after I heard the results, the unanimous vote against allowing even the party zone 10 locations in parks for people to venture out during a pandemic, to be able to have their picnic. Like, I'm still really, and I was swearing like a trucker when I called you. To be honest, I don't usually do that, but I was like, George, I need to call you. And you're like, you're okay. And what? 10 minutes of me like ranting at you?
All good journalists swear like truckers, don't they? In my experience, you know, behind the scenes. Yes, you were angry. You know, the decision, we talked about this last week, this decision, this report from the park board, where they're going to allow drinking in parks, but only on 10 specific sites in little zones. So I was at Jericho on the weekend with my kids and we had a bottle of wine there. Yes, I did. Try to find me next time. And we were like wondering, is there a spot in Jericho that has that's going to be allowed? And if it did, where would it be? And what part of this park? Because, you know, and everybody was having beer and wine everywhere. Everybody was. And so the
everybody's breaking the law.
Yeah.
Nobody died.
And the park board had this report with these 10 sites, these weird locations and weird narrow sections. And then they decided to defer this report, to delay approving even that piece of crap report, to ask to come back with more sites. But you're like, okay, well, first of all, the first report was a piece of crap because it was too specific. The second report, but even then, just approve it, and then come back with more and ask staff to come with more sites. What are you doing? And that referral was unanimously supported, which I was shocked by.
I'm so mad about that, George. I'm still not over it.
I think it was surprising that John and Tricia, you know, and they supported the referral. They also keep talking about this legal thing. I don't know how much more clear the Attorney General can make it to them publicly. He has said many times to Park Board, the regulations are embedded in the Vancouver Charter, which within the Park Board falls within. And all you have to do is reference that charter part in your bylaw, and there it is. You don't have to come and ask us to do that. You just do it. The regulation from the province is it's in the power of the cities, including Park Board in our case, to make these changes. It's up to the municipalities, and the Park Board is a municipal government for parks, to make that decision, and it falls within the charter. And legal staff at park board have got them all so wrangled up that this is some kind of legal issue. It's the Attorney General and the previous Attorney General, Suzanne Anton, have both said publicly, no, it's not a problem. You fall within the charter. Just do it.
Just do it. And the cities said it's okay. Yeah. And other cities have done it.
And like 90% of people in Vancouver want it done. And the polling is like, you know, people think we rant on this a lot, but I'm thinking there are so many pieces of this puzzle that are just like not just about alcohol. It's about governance. It's about nimbleness. It's about
what people need right now to make their lives more normal. I do not need to, every single time I go down to the beach or to a park, have a cocktail. I do not. I have a patio. I have a little yard. Yeah. I am a very lucky Vancouverite to have a little bit of outdoor space, to be able to have a 6-foot distance with 2 other people that might come over and visit the 3 of us in our house safely during a pandemic. I know so many people who do not have that. And what is being taken from those people right now is a travesty, in my opinion. I feel that this is the line in the sand that I was talking about earlier, the too far. You just went you shut down half of Stanley Park. That was bad. That was really bad. Yeah. We'll get to that in a second, but this, kicking it down the road for another 2 weeks? Are you kidding me?
So out of touch. I'm
so mad. And I don't get it. I don't get how anybody defends it, George. How do you defend kicking this down the road? Because I got a little of that back from one of the park board members who said, well, if I had approved it, as he had told me earlier on the radio live, that he was going to vote for. And then after I find out it's unanimous, I'm like, why did you lie to me? Oh, well, if I had voted for it, then I would have been.
There's always this challenge when you refer these reports. And I always, when I talk about referrals, that's where we send reports to die. You know, that's how you get rid of a report generally. If you don't like a report, and Vision would do this with my motions all the time when I was in office, they would refer it back to staff. Because they know, and then it could just be language there forever. It would be the greatest motion I'd ever written in my life. And they would say, oh, let's refer that for more staff consultation. You're like, oh, there goes my idea. It's down the drain. I mean, two motions about Granville Street I did, and they both got referred, down to nothingness. So in this case, but you have to, you do this dance where so the report came forward. There was an assumption that it would pass, and then somebody else decided to refer it because they want to get more locations. And I guess if you vote against the concept, the spin of this, okay, if you vote against this, the referral, it may appear that you're against the report itself. But I would argue that what's wrong with that? You could be against the referral and against the report, right? Because it's a piece of garbage report. It's crap. Yeah. Why would you support this report in the first place? But if you like that report, fine. But then if you liked it and it was being referred, then you could say, I didn't like it being referred. I wanted to approve it that night, and I don't like that fact it was being referred. You win in both ways. Like, to accept the referral is to accept delay and procrastination and unfunness and bureaucracy and
not
all that.
Tone deaf in a pandemic.
Yeah,
completely and utterly tone deaf. We're all going to be inside in the pouring damn rain. It's going to be dark at 4:30 before we even know it.
That's actually today, I think.
Right? Well, at least I was actually talking to my friend about it. At least it's light outside, even though it's dreary. Yeah. But come on. Like, this is insanity to me. And that there is so much bureaucracy, George, though. The bureaucracy.
Yeah. Staff are going to have to rewrite this report in 2 weeks. This report's being written for 2 years. They've been working on this report. Well, that alone says there's something broken at Park Board. I would say that, and we can talk about other stuff with Park Board, but I tweeted out after this, this is several now. I used to be a Park Board supporter, but we've had now at least 12 years of dysfunction, if not more, at Park Board. This is an elected body, the only elected park board in Canada. And if you were to say to me right now, and Linda Steele, I believe, did a poll in a show, is there any point to having an elected park board? It was like 75%, like, get rid of it. And I said, I bet you could win in a campaign as mayor or whatever saying, my party's called dismantletheparkboard.com. It's like,
everybody be in.
I will get my team that I've put together for Park Board, because they have to vote on this. Well, the first vote they will make when they get into office will be, we are now redundant and we're firing ourselves, and we're sending a motion to get the charter changed, and Park Board becomes a corporation within the city of Vancouver and managed by the city as a department like every other city.
Right. And then you have on that board botanists. people who take care of parkland,
Yeah.
who understand I don't think that the people that put plastic pylons all the way through Stanley Park have no idea how much that ruins that natural gem of a park.
Yeah. Do you know how much the head person of the park board makes? It's like over I think it's $300 and something thousand a year to be the GM of park board or whatever his title is. Yeah, it's a nice gig. You know, it's literally their budget is I mean, it's a huge you know,
oh my God,
fairly small budget. You know, you could argue, okay, well, the Sadhu Johnson, who's the basically chief executive officer of the city of Vancouver, but it's $1 billion plus budget. This park board's not $1 billion. It doesn't justify the fee of a senior executive. Anyway,
you can't get a hot dog at the main baseball diamond Little League park in the city of Vancouver. You can't get a hot dog there.
You certainly can't get a beer.
You can't. No, but you can't even get a hot dog. Then you go to the beach.
Baseball game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't. You want to know why? Because the hoops you have to jump through to get the permit in the park to sell the hot dog is the same as the permit to sell at the Celebration of Light. It's the exact same permitting process for that little tiny structure.
Why do you get a business license and follow health regulations and open up your stupid hot dog stand anywhere you want?
Here's the irony, George. When we last year or 2 years ago couldn't get hot dogs there, Brian and I went to Costco, bought a bunch of hot dogs, grabbed a bunch of buns, took a bunch of condiments, set up a table, and gave away hot dogs for donations, and then took the donations and gave them to the Little League.
You rebel.
I know. I made the news, but that's where I met a couple of park board people who came to say, this is really bullshit, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm like, yes, it is. There are good people at work on the park board, I'm sure, I guess. I'm confused by the current.
Well, the majority, they're all over the map, just like council. Like, what is the mandate? Yeah. What are you guys doing here? What's your focus? You know, we don't even know where they are financially. They've been spending so much time on the Stanley Park thing, which is costing them millions per year. Yeah. They've got this alcohol thing, which should have just been an easy peasy, done. Get it done. Okay, it was a
and make everybody happy.
Whatever. They could have just said, you know what? No, let's just turn a blind eye to it all, like we have been for the last 2 months, anyways. Yeah. I mean, they don't have enough money to actually administer the report when they finally do approve it. Who's going to be the officers that go out and find people who aren't sitting in those zones? They don't have a budget to afford to pay for enough people to police this new concept. So give it up. Move on and now focus on how you're actually going to cut the grass at the medians or in a park. If you go to many of these parks, they're a mess.
They're a mess. Well, look at Strathcona. We've also got the tent city that's bloomed up as you predicted.
Yes, Strathcona. Almost 200 tents now. 200 tents. And if you're a 19-year-old living in your parents' basement suite in Maple Ridge, and you're like, hey guys, we can set up camp down in Strathcona in Vancouver for nothing and live for the nice summer and free access to lots of good pot and fantastic. And not to mention, like I tweeted out the tent that popped up at David Lamb Park in Yaletown.
Yeah, I saw that.
This is. We have a big talk about neon sign flashing, except we wouldn't allow that. But figuratively speaking, saying, come on to Vancouver, free camping. Don't bother with the provincial government's websites for registering anywhere. Just come to Vancouver and put your tent anywhere you like. No problem.
Just pop it up right downtown. They won't move you. They can't. They've set the precedent already.
Yes. And don't get me, oh, George, you're so evil about homeless people. That's not.
No.
Go ask these guys. I think it was Bob Kronbauer from Vancouver's Awesome. So, George, you don't know who, basically accusing me of being mean to homeless people because of this tent. And I said, Bob, you're a journalist. Go ask that person. Go walk over to that tent and say, who are you and where are you from? Go up to every single one of these tents that are in the 200 that are in Strathcona, the ones that are popping up, knock on the proverbial tent door and say, hello, I'm Bob from Vancouver's Awesome. I'm a columnist, and I'd like to ask you, where are you from? Why are you here? Yeah. Don't just sit there and assume that they're homeless people. They're not. They're not. Some of them are. Some of them are protesters. Some of them are people who are just camping. Get over it, and let's figure out a solution for this and stop allowing this to happen and grow in all our
We have to have a solution. And some would say we've got to build market rental, right? We got to build more places that people can afford to live in, which will take us to our next conversation where you and we battle on the height of buildings. You love a tall building. You live in Yaletown. I do not enjoy a very tall building. I would prefer many lower buildings. I'm not anti-building. I'm not anti-density. I'm anti-Burnaby density. Like when I'm driving in from visiting my folks in Tsawwassen and I see the skyline of Burnaby, I don't want to live there. But I don't want to live there. So, but there has to be places where you want to live city living, but I also don't want to live in a massive single single family home with a massive wraparound yard. I live in the in-between, right?
Yeah.
What used to be on the property that I live on was a massive character home, and it now has 8 1,600 square foot duplexes that are 3 stories. We all live in like a little space shuttle, but we all no shared walls, and we have a little.
Yeah, but I live in a site that used to be an old gas station,
right?
And a little space of about, I don't know, 200 feet by 250 feet, and there are 400 people living there. So,
right. But you like living the downtown living,
yes,
right? And I like the in between of that. And I like what's happening on the Canby corridor. I like what's happening along 25th. They're, taking some of those old Vancouver specials and turning them into really nice neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods. The walking neighborhood. There's sun on the streets. There's sun on the sidewalks. Less New York City, less Manhattan. So that's me. And you are. Why wouldn't you keep going up? Because it doesn't cost you much to go further.
But I live actually in a townhouse on the side of a tower, and so when you and then we're talking about this, I think it's going to council tonight for a vote.
We should explain what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about this.
Right, sorry,
we talked about it before. Birch and Broadway. I think it's Birch, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And it's a development that is
where the Denny's was. The Denny's.
The Denny's, yes. It's, and it's going to be called Moons Over Miami Tower. No, I don't.
Moons Over Miami.
Miami, yeah. I'll take the Moons Over Miami suite, please. It's 28 stories, but it has a density. I think there's this FSR, what people talk about, and that's
what is that?
That's a square. It's basically the square footage per so how you massing. It's massing. It's how many square feet are plopped into that space. So when people like Michael Geller, who's a big supporter of towers, saying this, he feels that the massing, the size of this thing. Right. The Yellowtown, for example, Point Towers townhouses. That's the original concept. Small towers with a small footprint, high, much height, so lots of density in the height, small massing, then some townhouses. So you have some light that's able to get through. So the challenge with this building that people are arguing is it's dense all the way around. It's kind of feels like it's just a massing. It takes the whole site, corner to corner to corner, and goes higher than what is approved for that site. And so, the square footage is significant because they've maximized all the space around, and they've maximized the height by much more than was allowed on that.
And if I may interject right there, because I believe, I should double check this, but I believe it was approved for 16 stories and the want is for 28 stories. So George, it was like a year and a half ago when we first started having this conversation about Broadway and the density. And I was driving down West Broadway from my house to your offices at Curve Communications. And I kind of did the math on what the tallest buildings are up Broadway. And I think it was between 8 and 10 stories was kind of, there are certainly the 3-story walk-up kind of vibe, or the 4 maxed out for the most part. But when they were like the blips of taller building, it was about 8 to 10. And I was like, none of these really make me feel that claustrophobic kind of, wow, it's too tall, which I get. So like a 16-story building does not freak me out. Many 16-story buildings doesn't freak me out, but many 30-story buildings, when people I can't remember who it was, but I think it was somebody from the Daily Hive had said, it's time for West Broadway to grow up, right?
Kenneth Chan. He's
there you go.
Of the height of, and he's a big density proponent. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, but I agree that, and I think that we go back to that city plan, and God only knows where council will go with this, right? But where's the zones for those big, tall buildings? Because I don't have a problem with the new, big, beautiful, zero, what do they call it? The butterfly building?
The one on Broadway.
Passive. Yeah, the
one down. Well, here's the challenge the council has, and it's partly their fault. They've put themselves in this sort of quagmire. So before I left, we approved what was called the Broadway Plan, which is basically rezoning and replanning Broadway from basically Main Street all the way down to Arbutus. In light of the fact we're getting the SkyTrain going underground there, so which is being built, and property they've bought I think 20 properties now along this to put various things that they need.
Yes.
So you have, but this site kind of falls in the gray area because we put a moratorium on any new projects until this Broadway plan was done. But this one kind of fell into, it had been submitted just prior to us making it. So it's kind of falls into this gray zone. So the council's dealing with this dilemma where they don't have a Broadway plan, which, by the way, they should have, because it's been over 2 years since we approved that, which should be about at least should be enough time. But this council has been so disruptive in the day-to-day operations of city by their 200 motions over 2 years that are making it impossible for staff just to get the work that was assigned to them before. And then they got all this other work, which is the priority. Where is the priority of this council? The Broadway corridor, and then they have the city plan, which this council approves. So all planning staff are now focused on city plan. They got pulled off Broadway plan, and it's taking Broadway plan. And we're building a SkyTrain there. It's happening, people.
Yeah.
We're starting to.
We need that plan.
We need that plan.
And then you can do the rest after.
Yeah, and that plan could have been maybe point towers, light. Yaletown's example, in most areas, West End, you have basically you're allowed 2 towers per block, and everything else has. So you create this sort of light. It's basically a Vancouver concept. We don't have that New York kind of thing.
Wall of buildings. Yeah.
Like we also have the fact that this is a SkyTrain station will be here at this location. Like within a block of that location is a major SkyTrain station and potentially a LRT to downtown. So you have to think about, you want people to live around stations so that we can maximize the use of those.
Totally.
So they're in a dilemma, but it's their own fault because they keep inundating staff with a bunch of junk and nothing gets done.
That reminds me, and you're usually the insider guy, but I got a little inside intel from City Hall. I got it from a friend of a friend, like a mom friend of a friend, literally having a coffee, and they brought up, oh yeah, we watch your UnSpun podcast, or we listen to it, which actually she said we watch it. And I'm like, great, that's awesome. And she goes, oh my God, one of my friends is on the staff at City Hall, and staff are losing their minds at how many annoying, high maintenance, ridiculously unnecessary pet projects of councillors are being put on the table for them to have to run around and juggle. It's just, they're so frustrated. And who am I? I don't know. And I'm hearing that. I imagine it must be pretty stressful in there.
Yeah, it is. And then you see some tweets this week from Bob Granville and I think it was Justin McElroy, CBC, talking about the actual council process internally and watching the points of order, points of this, delay this, takes them all day. They don't get reports done. They don't get staff things. They're sitting there, delay, amend, delay, amend, point this, point that, like, oh my God, you people, get your act together and focus on your job, which is to govern the city and not to micromanage staff.
Is the mayor in charge of this, George? Who's falling down in there?
Well, he's a weak mayor in many ways, but our structure is he's one vote, and he doesn't have a majority of people on his team in the chamber. So if he had 5 people with him that he knew he could always rely on, then they could push things through. But they have
like we've seen the back room push through. So we kind of swung that pendulum.
We went to the opposite.
Right. You know what? We're short on time and long on topics. So,
yes.
But what you were just saying, did I see Justin McElroy? Did I see Bob Cronenbauer? No, because I've deleted Twitter from my phone. I'm still on Twitter, and I will still totally use it for work. And you'll see probably UnSpun podcast on Twitter. But it's not on my phone anymore. It's only when on my work laptop here, and I check it very, very rarely because it was kind of consuming me, especially with like the news cycle that we're in right now. And I found that I was very often sucked into US politics, and people assumed wrongly that it was because the cyclist hub nut jobs were coming for me about Stanley Park. You know what? Bring it on. I can take the cyclists because I like biking, and they can call me anti and pro car, and I want everybody to die on bikes.
You can't be both.
Watch me.
You can't like cars and bikes. It's impossible.
Oh yeah, watch me. Oh, I've got a little announcement for you next week on that front there, George. Okay. Oh yeah, it's going to be fun. But my honest to goodness, if you read my column at the Orca.ca, my middle this week explains why I got rid of the angry bird from my phone and how important it is. And we say it all the time here on UnSpun. One of the reasons why we do this podcast is to engage in the politics that matters to our bottom line. The money that we spend in taxes is being spent here, not in the United States, not by, I said, can you name 5 mayors to a couple people? No. I said, who's the Speaker of the House in the United States? They knew. Who's Senate? They knew. You know, who's the AG there? They knew. And I'm like, okay, clearly we are too engaged where we don't have a vote.
You're definitely more, I mean, I use Twitter, obviously. It's George_Affleck. And who cares? Jody Vance, she's not on Twitter, so it doesn't matter.
I'm on Twitter still. I'm just not on my phone.
Don't even bother looking at Jody Vance on Twitter. She's got nothing to say anymore.
Go away. I got nothing for you.
But you know, it is upset. Amanda's always like, get off your phone. Hello, your kids are like, my kids have this game of dad, to see how many dads I can get in before I go, what?
Yeah. 4 days, George, I have not had that bird on my phone, and I already feel better. And I should tell you also that I give full props to Andy Lassner, who is actually my Twitter crush. I love my Andy. Right. He is the executive producer on The Ellen Show. He's the guy that's roaming around her backyard all the time. He's terribly funny, average Andy. And he took a break off Twitter and moved over to Instagram. By the way, at Jody Vance on Instagram. I am on Instagram. At
George Affleck. No underscore.
No
on Instagram
underscore.
Or Facebook. It's only Twitter. And actually TikTok, George Affleck. Just Twitter. I only have the underscore.
Are you doing like the...
I got, no, I don't do it. I haven't tweeted. I don't think I put one TikTok out yet, but I like to watch.
I don't know.
My kids get mad at me. They say, Dad, you don't like anything so your algorithm's all screwed up. You're getting all these weird TikToks. And I'm like,
Well, on that note, see you, George.
Bye.